Welcome to the January 15th, 2019 episode of Reactive Consciousness, our in-depth podcast about what happened this week in our lives. I'm your host, vysethebold, and this is...
PyroJackFrost.
Yar har fiddly dee.
And OldManStompy. Recently this name was under dispute. I had to fight Senior Stompy in Magic the Gathering Arena. We were both playing mono green Stompy decks at the same time. I won the first match and he won the second one. And I haven't had a rubber yet.
Are you sure he wasn't like of Hispanic descent and it was just Senor Stompy?
It was Senor Stompy, in case it wasn't obvious from my pronunciation. He was my Mexican equivalent.
Well, that's good. At least he could be a young Mister. That's for sure. So that's fine. That's fine. You'll notice that Lotus is absent this week. Unfortunately, he is under the weather, so we'll just have to party without him.
Mm. That should be easy.
It's not a party unless it's Lotus Prince party. So.
Yeah, he won't get any of the whiskey that we're having. It's such a shame. Mm-hmm. But this week we actually had a lot of action happening in the world of games here. So I did want to talk real quick about the Activision Bungie split. So Bungie is a company that's really near and dear to my heart. I loved early Bungie stuff, all the way from the Marathon games and the early Halo games. I played a lot of Halo growing up. In high school. Halo 1 was like a big deal for me and my friends. We used to play local multiplayer with LAN systems. There was even a couple times where we got 4 TVs, 4 systems, and 16 players going. And that was like the most fun that we had ever had. Nobody brought that many computers around. You can LAN computers, I guess, and I wasn't a big computer guy at the time, but that was a huge deal. So my first exposure to Bungie was Halo, but then I got back into the Marathon games, and those games still hold up quite well. So, and I like the first Destiny. I bought the second one, but haven't really gotten into it. But I actually think that this kind of split is always a good thing, because I'd rather have them be on the free market. You know what I mean? Working with different companies.
Yeah, I thought it was interesting because same here. I played a lot of Halo 1 and 3. 1 when it came out, it was a big thing, and 3 because that was the game we were playing in college. I never really played the Marathon games or any of their other games. I didn't play Destiny 1, but I was playing Destiny 2, and it was pretty fun. But I mean, in terms of the whole Activision split, I think it's interesting because Activision bought them back. I don't know if they bought them or whatever, because they were working for they were partnered with Microsoft, and then I think Activision bought them, or they had a partnership or whatever. But it's kind of good to see them splitting, because like Activision has been kind of rearing their ugly head in a lot of things lately. I find it the most interesting that they were able to keep the Destiny IP. I would have sworn Activision would try their hardest to keep that, but
that is very interesting. This means that they could do whatever they want. Maybe they could be a little bit more artistic rather than
monetary.
Well, yeah, exactly. Maybe they could try some new things, with what they have, or smaller projects that are more interesting. I'm always interested in smaller projects anyway. There are very few AAA titles that I will play over a really good, interesting indie game. So I'm all for this. I mean, if they come up with another really interesting game, it doesn't even necessarily need to be a first-person shooter or anything like that. What are your thoughts, OldManStompy?
I mean, so I don't have a lot to add on the side of Bungie themselves. I mean, I thought I'd let you guys take up the oxygen on this one. I played Halo 1 through 3. But really more because my roommate, when I was over in Europe, was really into it, and I brought over the Xbox 360, and we played the first 3 games. I wouldn't say that I follow them all that closely. I mean, I'm interested to see like for me, I've only known Bungie. I know they have a couple of other games, but like all they've ever made is like multiplayer shooters, right? Like the Halo series is an extension of the Marathon series, and Destiny, like it felt like when they were purchased by Activision, like they wanted to do it to make something other than the Halo series, which is probably what they would have wound up doing for the rest of their lives if they had just stayed with Microsoft, right? But then they went ahead and they made another like very Halo-like, mythology.
I mean, they made another game, I thought, between Marathon and Halo that was like a third-person action game or something. I don't know.
They made Oni on the PS2.
Oni, yes.
Yeah.
That was on the PS2, like even before Halo 1 came out.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think they've made much other than those. I think they're just pretty much have been typecast for the better lack of a better term. They're working on Matter right now. They've only done Halo games since Oni and Destiny. And before that, there was the Myth games, which are very highly regarded as well. Those are strategy games. And then there's they have some other like lesser known titles as well. But a Marathon was a lot of fun. It was the first person shooter that I remember that had had a mythology behind it. Doom is just like you're on Mars, kill all the bad guys. Like Marathon actually has a story going on if you read the logs, which was really neat. And it was one of the first games that have like a really deep lore system, in a 3D space and all that kind of stuff, introduced into like an action game. Of course, there were really deep lore games going all the way back to any D&D based computer game. Even on mainframes, they had really good involved stories, but this was like the first game to do it in an action space, if you ask me.
So like I recall when especially the first 3 Halo games, which were kind of a trilogy unto themselves, were released. Like when they came out, because of the sort of the abrupt ending to the narrative of Halo 2, like they came across as a little underwhelming, but like regarded as a trilogy, like as a holistic piece altogether, I think a lot of people find them pretty fondly regarded. I'm sure a lot of people like Vice grew up with them like during some portion of their formative years, and like a lot of games, you can never underestimate that impact that it has on people.
Yeah, this was a huge deal for a lot of people in my sphere, especially when Halo 2 came out. It was like the biggest, like most anticipated game like ever at that point, and for good reason. It is still a very formative game in that it basically pioneered like matchmaking on consoles. I mean, before that, the only other game that could really touch it console wise, in terms of popularity and sphere of influence, was probably be like Phantasy Star Online. And it didn't have the infrastructure. It had the gameplay, which is why it held up. But Halo 2 had both. It had the gameplay and the infrastructure, right. And it also pioneered the regular use, the mainstream use of online console abilities. So that can't be downplayed. That's a huge thing. That's like the basis of all the games that we play today. Even in the PC space, matchmaking really wasn't a thing. You just went onto a server and then played whoever you felt like playing. This was like the first game to really like group you into tiers and things like that, and give you like an ability ranking and stuff like that. And that's very important because you want to feel like you're you could play within your own pond. So
it was basically
that was cool.
The reason to have like the Xbox Live in the first place was to be able to play Halo with all of your friends. It was the one thing that the really big thing that Microsoft early on in its first generation of the console wars offered that the other two consoles really didn't at all.
Yeah. So I'm very thankful for the people at Bungie for the work that they've done. Destiny is something that I've always been interested in, but never really sunk my teeth into it. And I think it's mostly because...
Would you consider it a series you'd want to get into?
More on that later on in the week. But yeah, it's something that's intrigued me. I always like games that have subtle stories and that you have to dig a lot about, and also that there are a lot of fan theories about. I'm always big into that. That's always the most compelling thing. That's actually probably the main reason why I like Dark Souls so much. Is because I like looking up the lore online and reading about stuff like that. But
Yeah,
I'm glad that
I like. Sometimes I feel like I like reading lore about games more so than playing the games themselves.
Me too. Me too. And I feel like hopefully they don't have the dark overlords pushing them right now, and they can feel free to work with other companies. I hope they only make like one game deals at a time, so they can be a little bit more free now. They're apparently working, on a Windows game right now called Matter. I'm not sure what it's called, but maybe they're working with Microsoft again. If there's no love lost, that kind of thing. But I'm looking forward to seeing whatever they come out with, because they've always been really good about mechanics. Mechanics has always been a big thing for them. And Halo's story is apparently really good, but it's too big. For like you have to follow it in so many media forms. That it's very hard to follow.
Just
you
like
have
Kingdom Hearts 3.
Yeah, you have to like read all the books. You have to watch the series and all the supplemental material in order to understand everything. And it kind of lost me in that regard. If it was all just in the games, it'd be a little bit better. But yeah, but hopefully that. I like that about them, but I also when it gets out of hand like that, I've been played out. You know what I mean?
I mean, I don't know much about like the Halo world, so I don't know if this is true, but it it could be that the books and other things are expanding the story, because there's a lot of games where like the game itself tells the whole story, but obviously a lot of people want to see more about it, so they make books about it, they make series. Like if you think about, there's lots of like Diablo, StarCraft, Borderlands. Like you can play those games and understand the story as told, but they might have books that tell more about other characters or more about the world. Now, I don't know about for Halo. I don't know if you need to read the books to understand the whole story, or if that's just for an expansion of the universe.
Well, apparently in Halo 4, a bunch of people complained that they didn't understand what the hell was going on, because a lot of stuff happened in between the games in the books. So like, and they didn't explain it well. They didn't do like a recap. It was like, oh, this is reality now. So that was actually one of the complaints. Halo 4, from all intents and purposes, was the first non-Bungie Halo game, but is also highly regarded by a lot of fans as being a particularly very good-looking game. That's like the major thing that people love about it. But in terms of cultural cachet, it's not nearly as big as the Halo 3 trilogy, I guess, because there's ODST and Reach. So it's just one of those things. But yeah, I think they priced themselves out on lore. They went crazy, kind of like Five Nights at Freddy's did.
Oh boy. I mean, Pyro already mentioned Kingdom Hearts 3. Like that. The big finale is coming up.
That's the worst.
In about 2 weeks, right? As of the taping and even the listening of this podcast. And they've re-released portions of the series like 3 or 4 times just since the last, Gaiden story of the series, just to give people an opportunity to understand what's going on. I think you still don't really get the full picture of like the scope of the narrative, even after having taken in all of the like it's hard to play like 8 video games that take 20 to 40 hours apiece.
Yeah.
And like keep all these threads running in your head while you're trying to piece the story together.
Also, there are a lot of characters that nobody cares about, so like you end up like losing them, in your head.
And also just a lot of characters, so you lose them.
Yeah.
Really, like a shooter like Halo, like it's not a good narrative vehicle for anything other than the action scene of a story, right? Like, so RPGs really aren't great for that either, because it's usually pretty like slow and tedious. When the action has to stop so that you can have a storyline sequence, but we accept that, when you go into a JRPG, you know that you're playing for like the storyline rewards at the end of a dungeon, and that you're going to spend like 10-15 minutes relaxing after a hard boss fight, like watching some story sequence that might not have that much action in it. But like that's the only kind of game that we have that really does the beats of a story really well. Like the action games tend to show and not tell, right?
Yeah.
Like that's the point. You don't want to pull yourself out of the action. It does happen occasionally. There are some like very, very famous sequences of good storytelling in shooter games. There's like Spec Ops: The Line. There's Call of Duty with the nuclear bomb scene. Like there's some really good scenes that take the agency out of the player's hands. But that's not really why we play shooters.
Yeah. You do it for the mechanics and
right.
The thrill.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, we should move on here while we have the time. I mean that could be a whole podcast in itself talking about this kind of stuff. But I know that I wanted to give you the platform, OldManStompy, to talk about recent happenings in wrestling. I know there's been a lot going on.
Sure. So this is actually kind of a big deal. There's been rumors circulating about this for quite some time now. I know that Vice, even you had mentioned that you had heard a little bit about this to me once.
Sure.
So there's a faction in Japanese professional wrestling called the Elite. That's Kenny Omega, the Young Bucks, Cody Rhodes, and a couple of other sort of mid-card acts in New Japan. So their faction name is the Elite. They have the YouTube series called Being the Elite. They have a really strong brand in America. New Japan have put a lot of effort into pushing them as main event stars. Last year, in 2018, at Wrestle Kingdom in January 4th, which is the WrestleMania of New Japan Pro Wrestling, all of them were either competing for titles or won major titles, like at that event or very soon after it. It was with the intent of New Japan gaining a foothold in the American market. A lot of them, they
what channel's that playing on right now? Is it El Rey?
It's on El Rey is Lucha Underground, which is a venue for like the Mexican promotions to get their wrestlers featured in American markets. AXS is the American channel that airs New Japan. Anyway, so the close to the end of this year, the four of them got together and they ran their own show in Chicago called All In, and it featured a lot of the major acts from independent wrestling that had not been featured or signed with WWF previously, or like any other major American promotion besides maybe Ring of Honor, and it was a huge success. So around that time, there was also some swirling rumors that they were actually going to go into business for themselves and start their own promotion, and they were going to get funding from Tony Khan, who's the co-owner of the Jacksonville Jaguars, who's like a legit billionaire in his own right. And with that leverage, they were going to start running perhaps even their own television show on American cable television, which would be the first time since TNA started around the turn of the century that there was a legitimate competitor funded at the same scale as WWF.
Oh, wow.
So
yeah.
Shortly after Wrestle Kingdom 13, which was again also January 4th, I tried to watch it during MagFest, but I've never been able to sit up through an entire Japanese professional wrestling pay-per-view live because they end at like 7 o'clock in the morning. So like even
wow, yeah.
Even when I'm at my most degenerate, like I've never been able to make it to the main event of the.
I don't blame you.
But so all the members of the Elite. So Kenny Omega was the champion coming in, and he lost. It was actually really cool. He came out to Undertale music. He's like obsessed with Undertale right now.
Just a quick aside here.
Yeah.
Did you see that Jack Black's been doing like a YouTube like project right now?
So remind me. I saw like one thing that he did. Oh, he went to round 1. Yes, he went to round 1, and he played Dance Rush Stardom.
No, he did Groove Coaster and he did Megalovania, and was like really like acing it. He was doing like really well on it, and he was singing along to it. Like he actually like knows the song, which is awesome.
That's
pretty cool.
So he was good at Groove Coaster.
Yeah, he was playing Groove Coaster.
That's a hard rhythm game.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, he's a legitimate musician, so you think at least he has a sense of rhythm.
That's true. That's true. But sorry about that. That was a quick aside.
I lost my train of thought. Oh yeah, so Omega he did a collaborative. So his promo for Wrestle Kingdom 13 was a collaboration with Toby Fox and Temmie Chang. They did an Undertale style themed 3-minute video to promote his match, which is pretty cool. And then he came out to an orchestral version of the final boss theme for Undertale, which was really cool.
Neat.
But he lost. He lost to Hiroshi Tanahashi, who's the John Cena of New Japan Professional Wrestling. He's been their ace for 15 years.
Wow.
And they always put the title on him when it feels like there's a little bit of uncertainty with the company. So yeah, the Young Bucks were the tag champs, and Kenny Omega was the singles champion. They all lost their titles or title matches heading out of Wrestle Kingdom 13, which is basically the sign that they are all leaving or close to leaving or planning on joining this new promotion that was about to be announced, and that their focus would be off of that onto this new American promotion. So about a week after that, there was a press conference in Jacksonville where they formally announced the formation of All Elite Wrestling, which is not a great choice for an acronym. It's like EU. It just does not, and you could feel like they were saying things in front of the crowd in Jacksonville, trying to find a short version of it that didn't sound like they were disgusted with themselves.
Crusty comedy classic. That's not good.
It's not quite that tier, but branding is really important, and you want people to be able to talk about this without being like ew all the time. Unless that's the thing, unless that becomes mimetic by itself. But anyway,
sure.
So, it was hard to watch. It was an outdoor press conference, which is not a great. It has basically no acoustics.
Bad acoustics.
It's not a great venue at all for professional wrestling. You can't get wind. You can't get any chance going. There was no wind. It was Jacksonville. It was the middle of Florida. Okay. It was just balmy and 60 or whatever.
Wait! They did an outdoor event in Florida. Aren't they worried about rain?
Or bugs?
It rains constantly in Florida.
Well, it seems like they were quite fortunate, and that did not happen. It doesn't seem like they had a backup plan. I think they've had basically one successful event that they ran earlier in 2018, and hopefully they'll iron out the kinks before it really costs them. So. The big the salient things to take out of this, for one, the fact they have a billionaire backing them means they can actually offer talent contracts which are competitive with the ones that WWF can typically offer. And in fact, I've been told that the reporting coming out of this is that the WWF contracts that they offer to independent wrestlers have also increased substantially because of this new competition.
Wow.
I think that WrestleMania is coming up.
Competition's good for everything.
Oh yeah, it's great. So
yeah.
WrestleMania is coming up in April, and the WWF actually tried to get all these guys onto their own programming. So for the Young Bucks in particular, supposedly they were offered money comparable to a main eventer like a John Cena or a Roman Reigns, which is unheard of for a tag team act that usually tag teams don't usually compete in the main event, right? That's a big deal unto itself. They wanted them for a WrestleMania program, and they were actually offered a opt-out clause after 6 months after WrestleMania if they were not happy with the direction of their creative control after the programs they were involved in after 6 months, which is unheard of in WWF.
Wow.
They're so it's sort of like imagine if Nintendo told Shigeru Miyamoto that if he didn't like the next Mario game, he could shop around with other.
Wow, that's nuts.
That's absurd.
Yeah.
They also signed Chris Jericho, which I think is the thing that you told me was the rumor that you had heard. So that had been floating around for a while, because this was around the same time that Jericho, out of nowhere, hit that, fuck it, I'm doing whatever I want phase of his career, because he's 48 now. He went to Japan, and he wrestled, he's insane in Japan. He looks nothing like he did in WWF. He seems to be having so much fun over there. He can swear in English all that he wants, because half the people don't understand what he's saying. So he goes up. He's
awesome. I love him.
Yeah, he goes to press conferences and he's like, "So what, fuckface? You want to fight me? Like live television, Japanese television."
I don't even know if they have words that they bleep over there. Do they?
I've never heard a American promo bleeped, incling the one guy.
No, I mean even a Japanese terms that
I have no idea.
Yeah.
There was another guy. There's another guy who was a jobber in WWF developmental who went and became a a mid-card star in New Japan Pro Wrestling. And they asked him, like, after he won a match, what he's going to do. He's like, yeah, I'm going to drink, like, a case of Sapporo and go balls deep in some Japanese women. And that also, like... that also,
wow.
like, got away, like, completely uncensored on television. And he's, like, also, like, really popular. He seems like his name is Juice Robinson. He's one of the... Oh, that's his stage name.
That's graphic.
Yeah,
Jeez.
yeah, it is. And, like, he seems like... So, like, it's believable that that's actually what he spends his time doing when he's not wrestling, and he seems like he's having a fantastic time in Japan. Like,
he's big in Japan. What can you say?
He's very big.
But
yeah.
I did want to ask you this. Do you think with a new promotion like that, they might have a good starting point for female wrestlers, or do you think it's still a boys' club?
So one thing that came out of this was that there's basically four like main former wrestlers who are still going to be actively wrestling, but will have like a major role in creative control of the company. So Tony Khan, the guy who's running it, is supposed to be the Vince McMahon. He's going to have final say over everything, which is a little bit troubling unto itself, you know, because like having one guy who's
a
like
dictator,
a big wrestling fan. Like you never know what kind of product he's going to want to put out there. The same thing happened in Japan. They just had a change of ownership. There's the new owner. They used to be owned by Bushiroad, which is a gaming company in Japan. They got sold to another toy company run by a Dutch guy. So it was really unclear how well he knew Japanese culture and like how well he would sign off on like if he would take the company in a different direction that would make it unamenable to Japanese audiences. So Tony Khan will take in we'll give him the benefit of the doubt for now, but people will have the same concerns coming in. Below him,
I imagine.
Below him are Cody and Brandy Rhodes and the Young Bucks.
Oh wow!
And the idea is that Cody will manage the men's division and Brandy will manage the women's division, also as the public face of the company and their brand manager. I think she has a degree in management. Or in business. So what they said coming out was that at least at the mid card for acts that are not main event level, because special attractions always get special consideration, like the base salary will be the same for all rank and file wrestlers. That includes both men and women. And it will probably in the long term include health insurance once they work out how the employment contracts is supposed to work. Because there has never been a full-time employment model for professional wrestling in the history of the business. So,
they've always been independent contractors or actors or whatever.
They've always been independent contractors, and they've always been reliant on the whims of the company that they worked for to be willing to pay for like their rehab for injuries, their surgeries, their healthcare, and things like that. And like most of the time, the WWF in particular has been obliging. But there have been some really high-profile cases where people have suffered severe injuries because they were unwilling to play along with the WWE like restrictions on what they were allowed to do, to rehab themselves. So if full-time
basically blackmail at that point. Yeah.
So if full-time health care becomes a selling point to an all-elite contract, then like that's like groundbreaking. That's
a huge deal because these people like they're crippled when they get old enough. Yeah. I mean. The vast majority of them. I mean, you have Hulk Hogan who has like a terrible back. You have everybody. When they get to like their late 40s are all wrecked. Mm-hmm. Their early 40s there's still something there, but their late 40s they're and their hearts, geez, and the concussion issues too.
I hope. Well, I mean, at least in the WWF's case, like from the standpoint of like their hearts, a lot of it was because they were like drinking, doing cocaine, and painkillers like all at the same time. They had like basically no health management
and steroids
whatsoever.
on top of it.
Yeah, all those things together. We'll just murder. I'm amazed that Hulk Hogan is still alive, like, which is a shame because he's like a gigantic piece of shit, and there are a lot of like, like genuinely.
Well, you know what they say about people like that, mean like pieces of shit like stick around.
The bile
it's very true.
Keeps you alive for a long time.
Who knows what it is, but like it seems that way, doesn't it? Mm-hmm. It's the like piss and vinegar that keeps them alive. Yeah.
Right. So yeah, I'm pretty excited to see where this goes. So like tentatively, the last big example of something like this happening was actually TNA. So TNA was run by Dixie Carter, who was the daughter of the founder of Panda Energy, like a major media company. And she had billions of dollars to recruit all kinds of stars. Not billions, but she had a lot of money to recruit stars. They had a television contract. She had access to, Sting was a lifetime TNA wrestler. AJ Styles was a lifetime TNA wrestler. They certainly had the talent. But they ran the company into the ground by trying to compete too directly with WWF.
They should have found their own niche instead, huh?
So So certainly all Elite can do that. It's going to be run predominantly by wrestlers. But just like you get excited about a Kickstarter for a new game the first time it comes out, like being made by some studio that made a game previously for a major publisher. Like there's
I don't know any company like that. No.
we
Can
literally
you come up with a couple examples?
We did the whole
Please.
last week's podcast about it. So if you haven't,
okay.
I know you know this, but spoiling it for our fans who didn't listen last week, go ahead and listen. we did a whole segment about it. There's no guarantee that like people who are workers in a company, even if it seems like they're very good at their job, will be good at running the company.
No.
Daniel
Business
Bryan's a really famous
acumen
example
is
of this.
something different than that.
So like Daniel Bryan is really famous of saying that he could never become a teacher because he's so good at wrestling that he can't understand why other people aren't as good.
That's valuable, and it's vice versa as well. There are teachers that can never be a pro, but they're like the best teachers in the world and can get people to pro.
Mm-hmm.
There's plenty of people like that. I mean, they all work for major NFL institutions and all kinds of things like that. There are all kinds of coaches that never made it to the big show, but have pupils that that they've boosted with their tutelage. I mean, there's plenty of people like that. They're two different skills.
Professional basketball is sort of notorious about this in the sense that like no star level basketball player until maybe a little bit Larry Bird.
I was just gonna say Larry Bird.
Like ever probably really became a major, like a really successful executive or coach.
Michael Jordan a little bit, but I think they more did that just as a like formality,
Well,
just
yeah.
to
So
thank
I
him.
think I can't remember Oscar Robertson. I think his name was the first player to. It was a fantastic player, but he had a front office job, I think, with the Clippers for a long time, mostly for symbolic reasons. Michael Jordan was in that. He owned the Charlotte Bobcats, right? I think that was mostly for as a figurehead. But like there were some bit players, like Pat Riley was an amazing coach, but he was basically a nobody. He did play basketball professionally for a while. Phil Jackson, I think, also played basketball professionally for a while, and he's like arguably like one of the 2 or 3 best coaches in NBA history. So yeah, tentatively, I'm optimistic that this will be interesting. But like TNA ran themselves into the ground, and the WWF is like a cockroach. Like they're indestructible.
It's full of it's run by one of those old men that won't quit.
It's run by one of those old white men who only seems to fail upwards constantly.
He invests all this money into a stupid NFL competitor, and then still wants to do it, even after he like fucked up like royally, and everybody made fun of him. Anyway,
to be fair, like they have a pretty big windfall. They got all this extra money from Saudi Arabia and all this extra money from Fox News, and I hope that success is also like not actually sustainable. There's no like. That really feels like the majority of that business came from like their political loyalty to the modern American Republican Party, and not necessarily because they deserved it because their programming was quality. So that by itself is not sustainable. Like Vince is going to die eventually. Like he's 73, and he's done all the same things to himself that Hulk Hogan did. And once he's gone, and like so the reason I never bought WWF stock is because the entire company is basically run by Vince McMahon, and he could drop dead any second. Like
yeah,
Mm-hmm.
I was actually just gonna say that's a big failing with billionaires is that they end up at the same place everybody else does.
Mm-hmm.
Dead.
And exactly, exactly. No, that's what I'm getting at, and like. No matter what they do, how much of power they mass, they're going to die, and somewhere down the line, maybe even their next generation is going to fuck it all up for them.
Mm-hmm.
So
either squander the money or use it for what they would not have used it for.
I think they said something like it's like 99% of dynasties like use up all the money by generation 3. So, like the original people that make it, have it, and then their children. Have a little bit of their business acumen, and then by generation 3, those people are just rich people that don't have any drive, and don't know what to do and don't have the passion that generation 1 did. So like they don't know how important things are. It's kind of like do you ever read The Good Earth?
I have not.
No.
What's that about?
Okay, well, it's about Chinese farmers, like the life of a Chinese farmer, and he basically he starts off with nothing, and eventually he becomes like a very rich person, and then as he's dying, all of his children are selling off his farms, and like to pay for their like gambling debts and things like that.
Mhm.
And it's just like it's like the end of the Old Man and the Sea. It's like all this stuff was for nothing. Like this is what you got. You should have just been living a good life and enjoying it, and your power wanes with your life.
Well, to be fair, in Vince's standpoint, he's, even though he does most of the day-to-day operation of the company, and even though all of the programming they produce requires his final sign-off, he's spent a lot of time and effort compiling talent that can run the company after he's gone.
Sure, and his daughter's very good at it.
His daughter's good at it.
So is Jericho, Triple H.
Triple H is fantastic at it. I would argue that at least from a wrestling standpoint, the stuff that they put on developmental and the NXT brand is among the best. It's like an independent level wrestling show in terms of the quality of the action, but with WWF level production. So it's not clear if that will extend towards something that you have to market towards like an American mainstream, which is like really but like all that means is that this is a really exciting time for the business because the talent level is through the roof. There's more talented and like people, because of how easy it is to travel and how easy it is to watch things on the internet and how easy it is to communicate with people. Wrestlers have learned like more styles and more moves and like more like versatility than they ever have in the past, and they're much more cautious about what they'll let themselves get booked into. Like the pile driver has been banned in the WWF for a long time. It's one of the biggest like risk injuries to someone's like head and neck.
No more fluorescent light bulbs.
Yeah, well, no, there definitely are still fluorescent light bulbs. I did the whole. I forget if I mentioned it in the podcast, but like David Arquette.
Yeah, you did.
Regressed into being an independent professional wrestler, and he almost died on the indie circuit, taking a fluorescent light tube to the neck.
Yeah, he got lanced. Yeah.
So, like, just to preface this, David Arquette was the WCW champion in 2000, and it was regarded as one of the worst moves in the history of professional wrestling, and like one of the last nails in their coffin. And now he's like come back and decided to start from the ground up and become an independent wrestler, like almost 20 years later. And he does like literal death matches where he could die in the ring, and it's like really weird.
Yeah, nah.
It's definitely like a midlife crisis kind of thing.
Yeah. It sounds like he's on the road to self-destruction there, unfortunately.
Well, we'll see. I mean, he was pretty fortunate to avoid like a fatal injury, but I don't think he's done anything of that caliber. Nor did he know what he was getting into when he signed up for the match in the first place.
Yeah.
So I don't want to put it all on him being a weirdo. Anyway, yeah, that's all I've got. The only like big thing up in the air are like a couple of the big Mexican stars who have not signed for it, who are like still under contract with the television.
Literally
program.
up in the air most of the time with luchadors.
Yeah, that's very funny. Yeah. And of course Kenny Omega, whose contract with Japan is actually up at the end of the month, but it's all but guaranteed that he'll sign with his friends at this Elite Wrestling program. Of course. So we'll talk about it more in a couple of weeks when that happens.
Nice. Okay, well, having said that, we do have some really nice definitive releases that just came out on Switch that I did want to talk about. These are like the best versions of some really damn good games here. So I'm very excited to talk about them. So I've been talking about this for a while and my excitement for it, and it finally came out last week. Sega Ages Outrun finally came out, and I played it, and it is 100% the best version of Outrun probably ever. Nice. It is excellent. They included a whole bunch of extra tracks from other versions of the game, like the Genesis version of Outrun, which is great. They reinserted it and made it sound like the arcade version, which is awesome. They even have a mix version where it has all of the songs in one song, which is really neat.
Interesting.
So you don't have to pick which Outrun song you want to drive to. You can listen to all of them.
Like at the same time, or like as a continuous like mixed track.
Every single song is playing at the same time.
It sounds like Crazy Bus at the end.
Yeah. No, it's a remix of all of the songs together, but it's really great. I really, really, really enjoy this. If you can't tell, and it's worth the $8.99 or $7.99. I think it's $7.99 that it.
I mean, Outrun was
every
a
penny.
good first driving game. One of the
Yeah.
first driving game. Probably not one of the first, but it was a good one of those types of games.
Actually, it's considered probably the first driving game in the sense that it's a driving game rather than a racing game. There's Night Driver, which you can make a case for it was like an Atari arcade game, but generally speaking, it's not a racing game, so it's not like Pole Position. That's what differentiated it. The main obstacles are time and the other people on the road. Rather than trying to beat somebody. So it has more of like a swimming aspect to it, and that you're just trying to beat your own score rather than somebody else, which is what makes it so much fun. And it runs at 60 frames per second. It's a joy to play. It runs in real, genuine widescreen. Like all these things that are better than the original version of the game. So definitely check it out. I could talk about it for forever, but there are plenty of other things here to talk about. Now, this is really cool, especially if you're a classic Mario Brothers style fan. New Super Mario Brothers U was just released on Switch, which is a definitive version of that. It includes new Super Luigi U on it as well. And it also includes Toadette, which wasn't in the previous one, and then also you could play as from the original New Super Mario Brothers, Buckenberry and Alagold, which are fan names for the yellow and blue Toad.
They have
which
fan
is
names.
Kind of cool. They're fan names, yeah.
What is it? People need to name everything.
I mean,
Buckenberry and Alagold.
I liked the more mundane names a lot better, which is Ivan and Wooly, which is just like yellow and navy backwards.
Oh yeah.
It's so much easier to say than like whatever it is that I barely interpreted what you just told me. I don't even know where those came from.
I don't know. It's been around. I'm not the only one who.
I mean, this is the same game for like this is the game that spawned Bowsette as a meme, by the way.
Correct.
For
yes.
people who've forgotten that already, that it actually came from a thing that Nintendo put out, and not just the imagination of the internet.
Well, no. Toadette can turn into Peachette.
Well, that's why.
Where
like someone surmised,
it's
like what happens
extrapolated from that.
Does that mean that everybody has an et form if they grab the Super Crown, and it turns out they only get 10 coins?
Well, it's really funny. They came out with they addressed it directly.
Yeah, they did.
They said no other character can pick up this power up, and that so sorry Luigi. They specifically said sorry Luigi, which is hilarious. So that was another thing that nobody unpacked. I don't think there was no traction on that. It was always Bowsette and then a little bit of Boo Zette was going around, which are named incorrectly, I might add. But
yes,
they should be
that's
Peach.
neither here nor there.
But anyway, and these games, this game also runs better than its Wii U counterpart, so therefore it is the definitive version of this game. So really fun multiplayer. I like it even better single player, but it's really good in portable mode as well. So it's a great game. Definitely go for it. It also is a much smaller file size than the Wii U version because they were able to duplicate assets for the Luigi U part of it, so that's pretty cool. This one's really cool and pretty exciting for Tales fans. Tales of Vesperia Definitive Edition was just released on Switch and other platforms, I believe, as well. This is a big deal because Tales of Vesperia in the United States was locked to Xbox 360. And it also has a early version of that game. The PS3 version when it came out in Japan, had the what are they called? The skits.
Yeah.
between characters when they talk in between battles, and that's a lot of fun for a lot of that's where a lot of the characterization comes in, and a lot of fun for a lot of Tales of fans. So this is the first time this is in English and also outside of the Xbox 360. So it's also one of the best Tales games ever
Yeah,
made
I was gonna say
by
it's
a
one
lot
of my
people.
favorite. I haven't played a lot, but it's really good.
Yeah, OldManStompy, you played a bit of Tales games, haven't you?
I played most of the Tales games that came out in America.
Okay.
I did play Vesperia. I did like it a lot. I do remember there being skits. I don't remember a Tales game in a long time that didn't have skits. So I'm not sure that's the part that I would consider to be like the added content. I know that the re-release of Vesperia had an extra character, 2 extra characters, I think actually. One of them was like Yuri's rival, who like people are really attached to, and always seemed like he was going to be a playable character, and then turned out not to be until the re-release. Now you can get him. Now you can get him. I'm assuming that's the version that's in this definitive version because it was in the PS3. And I'm sure there's another. There's like an extra dungeon at the end. I'm sure there are more things that have slipped my mind. I don't usually play re-releases of games that I beat once already, especially Tales games, because they're like 50 hours.
They're repetitive to begin with. Yeah.
Well, I mean, not even that. Like I play the Tales games over and over again, and they all play pretty much the same. So like playing another Tales game after having played all the previous Tales games is already like kind of a repetitive experience. Playing the same Tales game after I played a previous Tales game is like worse.
It's just goofy, yeah.
But I do like them a lot.
I'm glad
it's
that's
like
out.
It's one of my favorite all-time RPG series, and I'm glad that we sometimes eventually get this extra content, even if it isn't like necessarily worth the effort the first time around to bring it over. Especially since there's been like a whole console generation since then. So it's reasonable to think that some people would not have gotten their hands on Tales of Vesperia from the first time around.
So, in your opinion, what are the top tier titles in the series?
I think that Vesperia is a good choice to start with. My personal favorite is not like considered a top tier of the series. I just had a really good time playing it, which is Tales of Legendia for the PS2, which is actually like a lot of people think it's one of the worst games. I just really I really liked the characters in that game, not the gameplay, or anything else about the game.
Yeah, that's considered one of the black sheeps by a lot of fans, right?
Yeah, it's I liked the 2 Xillia games. If you have the capacity to play the 2 of them one after the other, I thought that the conclusion of the second game was worth like all the build up from the first 2 games. But yeah, those 2 would be my choices. I think a lot of them are pretty easy to get on the PC too. So
yeah,
if you want to play a newer one, Berseria, I think is the most recent game. That's a lot of fun to play, and I think it's available on the PC. So
Symphonia is available on PC as well.
Oh yeah, I mean they're all like kind of the same experience, like in terms of like the quality and how they play. So like any of the newer generation games after the GameCube, like starting from Symphonia, like is a good place to start.
Gotcha.
Just don't do Symphonia 2. That one is.
I heard that's garbage.
It's pretty garbage.
Yeah. Okay, well, there's some another Switch release here, which I was excited about, and I'll give a little bit of credence to. So this is the Neo Geo Arcade Archives release of Kizuna Encounter, which is one of the founding fighting games for a tag system. So this game is a very underrated SNK fighter. It's a lot of fun. I don't know whether it's necessarily really balanced well, but it's just a fun play. So the main character has a gigantic boomerang, which is pretty neat. Just like some really cool character designs and also a cool way to play. So if you're a fan of like the Marvel vs. series, or the Capcom Versus series, definitely check out Kizuna Encounter because this is one of the foundational games for tagging, which is really neat, and it's a fun experience. You won't regret buying it. Let's just put it that way. And I'm a casual fighting fan at best, and
Same.
I like this kind of game. It's a lot of fun. It has a lot of style, and it doesn't feel old. It feels modern, despite it being 25 years old at this point.
Yeah, I mainly play fighting games for their stories, which sounds weird, but it's like
you and Lotus too. I mean, a lot of people do that.
Yeah, that's why I played like the Persona 4 fighting game. I mean, granted, because it's Persona 4, but That's why I wanted
I
to
like
play,
that game a lot too.
That's why I wanted to play the new Soul Calibur game, even though I probably won't end up beating it or playing it or owning it all. There's no story, but that's kind of why I've been playing Smash, the new Smash, because I like the single player of that.
Yeah, me too.
Yeah.
Well,
About fighting
we also
games
have.
too.
What's that?
Talking about fighting games, Dead or
Yeah.
Alive 6 had a public beta on PS Plus, which is cool, but at the same time, it's just online. So, and there's only like 3 or 4 characters available, which makes sense. It's a public beta, but
I think it's mostly to test the netcode and and also the balance of those characters in particular. They're probably going to be the more popular characters that they're going to pick. But Dead or Alive series, I've always liked it because it's always been beginner friendly. Of course, a lot of fighting game fans have rallied against it because it's that way. In fact, there was a high profile instance over the last couple years where a Dead or Alive tournament was won by somebody who had never really played the game before.
I have like a love-hate relationship with Dead or Alive because I agree that it's very beginner friendly. Also, I first started playing it when I was an impressionable teenager. Those of you who know a lot about Dead or Alive might know why I wanted to play it as a teenager. And pretend that I'm 99 years old, if you know about the age slider.
Yeah, it was DOA 2 was on the Dreamcast was like that. Yeah.
But the problem is like it's really good for beginners, but at the same time it's really, really annoying, like even for beginners, because it's a lot of fighting games are like this, but it's very much a rock paper scissors type battle system.
Sure.
But I feel like when I played, I think it was Dead or Alive 4. I bought or rented or whatever it was, and the final boss was just really, really cheap.
That's the way fighting game bosses
No, I know.
I
know there's a lot of fighting games are like that, but
yeah.
It felt like it was more cheap than most just because since it's a rock, paper, scissors, it knew what you were going to do, and it just would, on a percentage chance, say, you know what, nope, you're not doing that.
Oh, we need to hook you up with a Real Bout Fatal Fury Special, the cheapest game I've ever played.
And in a way, that's why I don't like fighting games, because we all know that all games could be impossible if the creator wanted it to be, because they know what your button inputs are. They could make the game do whatever it needs to beat you. But I feel like in a lot of fighting games, the final boss is just, hey, let's have a 70% chance that the boss will follow through the knowing what you're going to do. And I don't know how else they could make good AI, but it feels kind of lame.
Well, a few years back, I guess about 15 years ago or so at this point, Sega put in a really big effort into their AI for these games because they wanted it to be a good experience playing them. So what they did was they actually studied play data of the best players of Virtua Fighter, and they based their bosses and some of the special fights off of specifically their play styles.
That's pretty cool.
And their reaction times and things like that, their average reaction times. So they had like this special Masters mode where you fought like I think it was in Virtua Fighter 4 Evolution. You fought like realistic AI opponents, which was really neat. That was really cool. I think they might have reprised that in 5 as well because that was a popular mode. Really cool stuff. So you could always hope that they'll put that kind of detail in it, but they're probably just focusing on the online experience, to be honest, because that's where it's at with these games.
That's where most people play their fighting games is online. So.
Yeah, and it makes sense. And then we the SNK 40th Anniversary Collection that I've talked about a lot. That was previously Switch only, is coming to PS4, which is excellent. I definitely recommend that people that own a PS4 definitely pick that up. It's really, really good. You also have Final Fantasy 10, 10-2, and 12 coming to Switch, which are some of the better Final Fantasy games in modern times, I would say. Those are like the best.
So Final Fantasy is like the opposite of Tales, where if you like one Final Fantasy game, there's like no guarantee whatsoever that like you'll be able to play any of the other games and that they'll be just as endearing to you.
I mean,
they're all totally different.
Past I guess you could say they are all different because you can't even say past a certain number because most of the games even before it became mainstream with 7 were all different from each other. Like they still had a similar battle system, but they had other systems that were completely different.
Yeah, 1 through 6 were like mechanically different, like in very subtle ways. Like they had different mechanics for character progression.
3 is a much different game than 1 and 2 are, and so 2 is much different than 1.
Yep.
I would say that 1 and 4 are similar.
1, 4, and 6 you could say are pretty similar, and then 5 and 3 are pretty similar.
Yeah, and that kind of goes into 12. 12 is most like 5. If you know, with the jobs,
it's
and
more
stuff.
that like,
but the
like
battle
everything
system is different. So that's the thing. It's mechanically
it's more like
different.
Everything after 9 is like almost not recognizable as what you think of as a JRPG.
Right.
Yeah.
Especially 12 and 13 and 15.
Yeah. I like all of the modern ones pretty well. I didn't play a lot of 13, but I like the other ones. I like 10, what I played of it. I like 12, what I played of it, and I played more 15 than any of them, and I like 15 a lot. So, these are great games to have on your Switch. I mean, they were great on the Vita with 10 and 10-2. When they came over to the Vita, it's good to have these games as portable games because any game where you do any significant amount of grinding is good to have on the go. And these games will run well, so I'm not really worried about them. They're old games by this point. And 12 is really funny because I had sworn I heard people praising this game forever, and then like right when the re-release was coming out, people shat all over the game. Final Fantasy fans are so dumb. I don't know
it's the
what
opposite
it is.
for me. That like when I hear about a new Final Fantasy game, all I hear about is people who used to play the older games like shitting all over it because they don't like it. And then several years later, when the remake comes out, people are all excited about it because they really liked this game growing up, and now they get to play a new version of it like several years later.
Which is interesting. That's what happened. I didn't hear people shitting on it for a Switch because when 12 came out, it was shit on because it was too different. Like even I'll admit I was like that, and then I actually played it, and I'm like, oh, this isn't that bad of a game. So I'm surprised people are shitting on it again because I think a lot of people warm up to each Final Fantasy when they realize the next one is also not going to be what they hoped. They're like, well, 15 sucks. I guess 13 was okay, even though when 13 came out, like 13 sucks, but 12 was okay. Keep going back.
Most people aren't bashing 15, which is
there's a lot of people bashing 15.
Yeah,
really,
especially like the structure of the game. I think like the fact that Square was selling it was one of the first games they chose to sell as a service. You know, it's like this model where in order to get the whole game, like instead of getting a new Final Fantasy game, we're just going to get like new bits and pieces of the lore. You know, in like $5 increments.
Yeah, and this is like a similar thing to Halo that we were talking about earlier. There's the base game was $60, and then each of the DLCs is like $15, but you kind of need them to know the story. Plus, you need to watch the movie,
the movie and the
that
anime
explains stuff. Yeah. Plus, there's like other stuff, and it's just too much to. Like...
You have to drink the Jones Cola that they came out with. Did you know about that?
No, go ahead.
They released I think at Target a special like creamsicle like Sid's Elixir or something like that made by Jones Cola.
They released like Louis Vuitton themed clothing for Final Fantasy 13. They had Lightning as a model. You can buy some very expensive Final Fantasy branded merchandise if you really want to.
Even El Shaddai had jeans that they sold with it.
Wow, that's El Shaddai is a deep cut.
Yeah. That's a Lotus Prince favorite.
Yep.
So anyway, but we should move on here. There is evidence of SNES games coming to Switch Online, which is a good move. Hopefully they'll release games quicker on this service and just have a Netflix like service. This is what Nintendo should be doing all along. Is just dump it all out on there. And like if you have all of the content and then like periodic updates, you know, this would probably turn out better for them. But they are releasing piecemeal NES games, and they start from the beginning every single time. So a lot of the really awesome like late generation games never don't get released until the service
they do it in
is
like
defunct.
release order kind of. From
Yeah,
that's really dumb. It should be in
yeah,
popularity order kind of.
Well, they they'll put out stuff like baseball, like Nintendo baseball, which was never very good. That's far from the best baseball game on the system.
This always really frustrated me because Nintendo was always so like they do this every single time they do a rebranding of their classic games. Like they did it with all the way back to the Game Boy Advance when they were selling like the NES themed little like $10 or $20 like micro game, like NES game. NES, I forget, it was called like the NES Classic line, I think, right? They sold a bunch of GBA games that were just regular NES games. And I'm sure the GBA could handle SNES games. They just insist on starting with the first generation of NES games every single time. Not even like Mario 3, not even like Zelda 2. It's always like the original Mario Brothers, the original Super Mario Brothers, like Xevious, like where did these games come from? Who wants to play Urban Champion for the
Urban
12th
Champion
time?
is another one.
Always in the lineup.
Yeah. So there must be somebody that's like a really high up CEO type position there that is championing Urban Champion for some reason. They even have the arcade version of it is released on the Switch now, which is ridiculous. Like why is that a thing? But and it's only slightly different. So like to the point where I think the difference is the music is like there's an extra track or something like that. It's insignificant. But anyway,
it's a spirit in Smash Ultimate too. And I saw the guy and I was like, no, I don't want you. Go away. I'm so tired of this fucking game.
They really need to rethink their strategy here. But I understand what they're doing. What the reason why they're doing this is because they think if they release them all, that people will only buy the best games. And to some degree that's true, but you also will have the interest level is going to be way higher,
and you'll have the money for people buying the good games. It's like
exactly.
I feel like while I can see that mindset, that's not to say like if I released the first 5 games that released on Nintendo, if they're not great games, people aren't going to buy them just because they're the only ones out.
Yeah, people are going to buy go for the original Super Mario Brothers no matter what. It's just that damn good, and that's the way it should be. You should only be playing the best games from this era. You shouldn't be going back to the shit of that era. I mean, what's the point? I mean, we have to put up with the shit that's coming out currently. We've filtered all that stuff out. Nobody's going back to play Nintendo baseball. Nobody's going back to play that. If you're a big classic NES fan and you're into the ROM scene, or you've been playing these games your entire life, to play RBI baseball. Or something of its ilk, Baseball Stars from SNK. Those are the 2 best games. That's pretty much undisputed. So they should be wanting to garner interest with their own properties to get games like that, so they can make a deal with SNK. Like, look, all these people are on our service. Why don't we license Baseball Stars to come on as well? Do that with Konami and get the original Contra. Things like that. They should be doing that. They should have a Netflix-like service where they have almost everything you want. And no bullshit. And then they occasionally get stuff and occasionally lose stuff. It should be like that. And there should be competing services, but that's just me. Anyway, we got to move on. Dragon's Dogma is coming to Switch, which is another cool game that a lot of people I think missed.
Yeah,
this is a cult hit.
So
I heard it wasn't that bad. I just never got a chance to play it.
I had actually always wanted to play this because I went to a concert a really long time ago by a Japanese band called BZ. They're like the only Japanese band that has a star on the Hollywood Walk of Fame, and they actually recorded the intro song to this game. So when I heard about that, I was like, wow, that's really cool. Like sometimes that's all it takes, to like make you want. But then I never bothered to pick it up. I've never seen a single second of this game, but I listened to the song a whole bunch of times.
there are a lot of fans of this game, and they're really happy to see a port, but they what they really want is a sequel. So I think Capcom's just shopping it around to garner interest because a lot of people are buying Switch ports of things right now, much more so than even their PC counterparts at this point are lagging behind Switch sales. So some people have been saying like the Switch is like is dwarfing all their other sales combined.
I think it's mainly because too it's a portable system. Like,
Yeah.
I think that, granted, it's because it's Nintendo also, but I mean, I would rather buy a game on PC, but it's really tough making the decision because I know I commute every day. It'd be great to have a game that I could play on the go.
I will buy a game on Switch unless it has a significantly better experience somewhere else. Like if I'm thinking about buying a game and I know that it may come to Switch, I'll wait it out until it comes out on that system at this point, because I've rebought a lot of the games that I've bought on Steam, but I've ended up playing them because I bought it on Switch because of its portability and the fact that I don't have access to our main TV all the time. Because, I'd rather spend time with my girlfriend when she's home. So, she wants to watch her TV, and I can play Switch while we're doing that. So, it's the perfect thing. Was there any bit about Kingdom Hearts that you wanted to quickly mention before we fold up here?
Yeah, I just thought it was interesting because, I mean, I don't remember if we talked about this on a previous podcast, but Kingdom Hearts 3 was leaked.
Oh, yeah, I heard about that.
But it was okay because they're not releasing the ending until the day one patch. So it's like even
That's
if
very
you
smart.
had it. But then the other funny thing is there's like 3 other, I guess, free DLCs that are releasing the day of up to the 3 days after. So the other thing that they're going to release the day of is like a recap. So you don't have to play all the other hundreds of hours of the other games to understand what the hell's going on. So on the day of, they're releasing a recap. So you can kind of, I don't know what it's going to be. It's probably just going to be like little movies. I don't think it's going to be all of the movie sequences from all the games, but we'll see. I'm pretty sure that even if you watch that recap, you'll probably still get a lot more if you read what happened because it's really convoluted, and the videos don't always help with that. Then the day after it releases, they're releasing an epilogue, which you have to have beaten the game to be able to even view. Which, I mean, I understand why they're releasing it the day after, but I doubt anyone's going to have... Well, that's not anyone. Not very many people are going to have...
Don't underestimate people.
Yes. I would say, though, not very many people are going to have beaten the game by that day. But then also, the day after it comes out. So it comes out on the 29th, I think. So the recap is on the 29th. The epilogue is on the 30th of January. And then the secret video is being released on the 31st. So anyone who's played a Kingdom Hearts game, there's always an epilogue, and then they always have, like, if you 100% the game or do these other things, you get a secret video. So it's the same thing here where you can download
It's usually like a Marvel stinger or something like that,
It's
right?
usually a stinger, yeah. So if you beat the game and have done all like certain criteria based on the difficulty, you can actually view the secret video, which I'm really hoping is not like a stinger. I really hope it's not like, hey, there's actually more, and it's like, fuck you, I've waited 10 years.
Wait another 15 fucking years, asshole.
I've waited 10, 15 years to see the conclusion to this trilogy, which actually is like 7 freaking games long, and now you're going to tell me there's more? No, stop it.
So
you waited through a lot of bullshit.
I did notice the trailer for Kingdom Hearts 3 included a character from the mobile, like the what is it, Union Cross game, which means that is now like a canonical part of the experience.
It was always canonical because it kind of explained how the Keyblade War began, but it's so stupid that that's a canonical game too, because no one's gonna actually want to play that to learn more about the story. That's whatever.
Right. So, like, I made this whole big deal a while ago.
Do they explain why their shoes are so big and stupid?
It's because they're all actually clowns. We've actually been pronouncing it wrong the whole time. It's not Keyblade, it's the Clown Blade War.
I would watch that with balloon animal swords. That would be great.
I'm surprised there isn't a Keyblade that's just a giant balloon animal right now, because they don't look like weapons, like once you get like halfway into Kingdom Hearts. And then they go back to looking like weapons again, usually at the end, because you get like a Final Fantasy themed one. as one of the ultimate weapons. But usually in the middle, they look like one of them looks like the crab, like Sebastian from Little Mermaid. Well, one of them looks like the genie's lamp. Like, they don't look like weapons.
Like, how are you bludgeoning people with this?
The power of friendship.
Yeah, power of fuck off. But anyway,
so I remember the online dialogue for this whole thing was like really funny to me because people were like really upset that they'd have to avoid Twitter for like the next month after the game released because like someone was going to buy it and data mine it and release the ending, and they found out, like it was the director Nomura who actually made the statement like, don't worry, all of the ending content is part of a day one patch. And then at first people were just like, phew, we don't have to worry about avoiding spoilers. But then we're like, wait a minute, we have to download, like, the game doesn't ship with the ending.
Yeah.
Like the entire, and now also, like it's also really ironic to me that they released all these games with the intent of, like, for people who wanted to get refreshed on what Kingdom Hearts is all about before playing Kingdom Hearts 3, like, oh, you managed to make it all the way to January 29th and you resisted playing all these other stupid games that we re-released. We'll just give you the recap if you really, really... just a text-based recap. You don't have to play any of the games anymore. We'll just tell you everything that happened.
Which, in a way, scares me because I feel like that means that you're going to need to know the story, like, everything that went on in the story to understand 3.
The second to last game, Dream Drop Distance, like, it did a lot to unpack some of the more mysterious goings-on in the previous games of the series. Like, I think like playing the game and maybe like reading the TV tropes page just to like pick up on things that you missed up on, like is reasonable for, because like TV tropes is the website for people who exhaustively research like every detail of a media work, so like if there's something subtle, they'll probably have a blurb about it, and you can just browse that after you finish the storyline that will explain to you what you missed. Or just a Wikipedia page. Like, it's not necessary, I think, to like have remembered every piece of every single scene of every single Kingdom Hearts game. Like, that's psychotic.
Well, I'm going to be the most sane and not play any of it at all.
But how will you know what happened?
I will be better off because nobody knows.
I'm going to tell you everything about it. I'm going to go to your house. I'm going to stand outside your window. I'm just going to instead of what is it, Sledgehammer by Peter Gabriel, I'm just going to hold up a boombox that's playing like Kingdom Hearts spoilers. Okay,
say anything references for all the for all of our fans out there. But anyway, But you'd have to shave for a little bit and become John Cusack for a little bit. So anyway, this is just a quick stinger for next week. I'm sure we'll get really into it, before we wrap things up here. But I did want to let everybody know that we are aware that AGDQ happened this week. So we will be covering it next week when Lotus Prince is back, because it's definitely his jam. So he'll distill that for us next week. He'll talk about some of that, the goings on there. Anything else for the good of the order, gentlemen?
I think we covered quite a bit already.
We did. I think we did enough. That is the show for this week. Please remember to subscribe to the Corrective Consciousness YouTube and Soundcloud pages. While there, please give us thumbs ups, likes, and 5-star rating us on iTunes. It promotes and spreads awareness of the show, and any bit of encouragement helps keep the show going. You can also catch us on Thursday for our sister podcast, Corrective Consciousness, the podcast where we explore the inanity of pop culture. Finally, you can friend me as vysethebold on Steam, PSN, Xbox Live, Twitter, Switch, and Battle.net.
And you can find me as PyroJackFrost, not PirateJackFrost, on Battle.net, Steam, PSN, Nintendo Switch now.
Ooh.
Probably other things that I'm forgetting.
We need to trade friend codes. I don't think I have friend codes of any of yours. Have we?
Yeah.
Oh. Oops.
I guess you're a really good friend.
Oh, I'm sad.
Anyway, you can find me as OldManStompy on most major gaming and social media networks except for Steam. And technically I have a Switch, but I haven't purchased the online yet, so don't go looking for me there.
Yeah, I haven't purchased the online either.
I also haven't online.
I did think it was extremely frustrating. Like, I had to go through all the rigmarole to like exchange friend codes, which Nintendo makes you do, and I was like, okay, I can finally play online games. And then I forgot that you have to actually also buy the online service or use the trial. So all that effort went to nothing.
Yeah, once there's a really good co-op game that I want to play with you guys, I'll sign on for that. That's what I'll be doing.
We'll try as well as we tried Triforce Heroes.
I mean, Triforce Heroes is a great game, but it's also a pain in the ass. There are a lot of other games that aren't a pain in the ass, as much of a pain in the ass.
I had a lot of fun with
play.
that. You know.
Me too. We should get back to it. Anyway, so that is the show for this week. We'll catch you on Thursday.
Goodbye.
Cheers.